Hey, welcome back, folks. Great to see you on this Wednesday evening. Got an update for you on what is still shaping up to be a big-time winter storm next week for areas pretty far south and about as far south as you can get winter weather in the lower 48. So we're going to break all of that down for you in today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll make sure you're up to date with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance as we continue looking at this very active pattern. And I'll tell you, so far, 2025 has had plenty of tricks up its sleeve, and I imagine the year will probably continue that. So even once we get past winter, it'll be good to be up to date once severe weather season rolls around and eventually so important hurricane season as we get on into the fall. All right, folks, with that said, let's go ahead and start breaking down the guidance. Now, what you're seeing right now next to me, this is an afternoon run of our latest European computer model and showing that potential well for potential southern winter weather from Texas all the way through the Gulf Coast and into the Carolinas by the time we get into next week. And that'll really be the big topic this evening and kind of really what we break down. But before we get there, we will talk about that Arctic air mass that could provide the cold for this winter weather and the potential for maybe some snow in the Northeast, even along the I-95 corridor going into this weekend and into early next week. All right, so let's go ahead and start by just breaking down this pattern and telling you kind of how it's going to unfold and all of the key players on the table. So this is our European ensemble. So this is the 500 millibar height anomaly map. So basically, this just shows us where do we have warm air, where do we have cold air, and also kind of tells us generally where we could expect some sort of low pressure or storm system to develop. Now, this is kind of what we're going to see going into tomorrow afternoon and evening across the lower 48. Still this big pocket of blue into much of the east, but we're on the converging side of that trough. So what that means is we're going to have sinking motion above our heads, and that'll prevent any kind of storm system of significance, at least, from forming. Now, we are going to have a little bit of a clipper system, kind of a short wave embedded in this that'll swing on through the Midwest and the Northeast. That'll bring some light snow showers, but overall, really just a cold day in the east tomorrow, while out west, a ridge builds in and we begin to warm back up. But don't let it fool you. This is going to kind of be one of those classic fake outs that we get during the winter, kind of fall spring. And I know it's only January, so we're not really thinking about spring, but compared to how cold it's been, you're going to think, well, is this the start of spring as that works through during a Thursday afternoon? And I think especially by Friday, if we move this ahead, this is Friday afternoon, that ridge building in, but behind it, Arctic air looms and will begin to push southward in a pretty vicious way here by Friday evening and into the weekend. A strong Arctic front likely to swing through the lower 48. That could kick up some snow showers and some rain showers, but more importantly, bring potentially dangerous cold through much of the lower 48. And you can kind of see that as we time it out here. This is into Saturday afternoon, into Sunday, and look at this, by the time we get into Monday, folks, this is just brutal cold, the entire lower 48 in this blue mass, and it's not very often we get a polar or an Arctic air mass strong enough that everyone in the lower 48 feels it. But I'll tell you, from California to Maine, we're going to feel that cold air. Then the question becomes, where does moisture overlap with that cold air? And that's what we're still trying to figure out exactly. But I've got a pretty good feeling that someone in the south is going to get clobbered pretty good by either snow and or ice, and other folks still in the mix as well. The Northeast, the Ohio Valley. We've got a couple different potential outcomes here that we'll break down in just a moment. But you see that cold air, all that blue hanging on by the middle of next week, and that likely lasts. This is into Wednesday, into Thursday. Check this out. Friday, Saturday stays active. And then I think by the time we get to about the 25th, the 26th here, that's when the pattern's going to change. And we haven't talked about the West very much recently, but stay tuned. Once we get later on into January, it looks like a little bit of a pattern change, likely a warm up in the Southeast and a big cool down out West as that trough flips, and will likely kind of flip the pattern once again. But before we get there, a very active kind of time period through the next 7 to 10 days or so. And let's go ahead and take a look at exactly how cold could be. Now, we'll start with our temperature anomaly map. So this is just the difference from normal. So this is Friday afternoon. You'll notice not a whole lot of blue on the map. In fact, we're kind of pretty well above average through Iowa, into the Midwest, down through the Great Plains, and even into portions of the East, warming back up compared to what we're feeling out there right now. Like I said, though, do not let this fool you. But I will kind of tell you, if you have fun plans, try to do them on Friday outside, because this could be the first first time, for a while that we kind of have nice weather. Maybe go for a walk, or I don't know, whatever you like to do outside. Kind of try to plan that for Friday, because by the time we get to Saturday afternoon below, here comes that Arctic front, well below average temperature, spilling southward into the lower 48, starting into the Rockies, moving into the Great Plains on Saturday, and then we'll continue this ahead by Sunday morning here. The only folks that are kind of still safe from the warm are from the cold rather, are in the extreme east through New England and through the southeast, but you folks as well will eventually feel the cold. Here we go, Monday afternoon below, well below average temperatures. Folks, check this out. Nearly 40 to 50 degrees below what we should be this time of year into Wyoming, Colorado, and even very cold temperatures, like I said, from sea to shining sea, seeing those well below average temperatures as that Arctic air settles in. Now we'll move it ahead further. This latches on, stays around. This is into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week, and then finally, once we get a little bit further out, about 10 days or so from now, the pattern begins to moderate, but that leaves a big open window for precipitation to overlap with that cold air. That's exactly what I think is going to happen here as we go into next week. Now, before we talk specifics about all the snow and the ice potential, I do want to briefly break down how cold this could be. I talked about the anomalies, but let's put some numbers to that anomaly. So these are low temperatures next Tuesday morning. So this is less than a week from now. About 6 days as you're walking out the door, we're going to be below zero for much of the Ohio Valley, the Great Plains, into the Rockies, all the way down to Kansas City, St. Louis in the single digits, flirting with zero, down into the teens through the deep south. We're talking Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, down even into Mississippi, Louisiana. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these areas even crack the single digits well down south. So it's one of those air masses we normally get about once a year. Well, this is going to be at least the one time this year. Not to say that it will or won't happen again. Obviously, plenty of time to go in this winter, but this is definitely going to be the coldest shot of air we've seen so far this year. And if you thought the low temperatures were rough, let's take a look at Tuesday afternoon of next week. We're not going to get above freezing likely in Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, all the way down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're only getting into the single digits through Ohio, Indiana, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the interior Northeast, some of those higher peaks up north. You might struggle to get get above the freezing, the 0 degree mark. Definitely going to be very cold air that kind of locks in for you folks as well. So you get the idea. It's going to be cold. It's going to be very cold even. Now let's talk about precipitation a little bit. So before we get to the kind of main show, there's going to be a bit of an appetizer with this system. So as this cold air pushes in, by the way, time and date right above my head so you can see that well. This is the latest European model. As that cold air pushes east, this is the early morning hour of Saturday. So our front likely somewhere draped right into this region, all that cold air pushing south and east, and that will likely fire off some precipitation into the east central part of the country. Now, I don't think that this will be a big deal. I'm not expecting big snow or big rain, but we will see some of both out of this. Snow likely for the Ohio Valley. You can see that up into Pennsylvania, into portions of Michigan, New York State, rain down south, maybe a little bit of snow mixing into the Appalachia chain there from North Carolina up into the Virginias, and then a little bit of snow into the interior Northeast. Now that gets us to Sunday. Now first little bit, not a big deal, but I'm watching this area that the models have been kind of hinting at a little bit as that cold air gets down near the Atlantic, potential for a bit of a coastal low to try to form in that time frame, and this would ride along the boundary and could potentially produce some winter weather into the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, including areas of the I-95 corridor. Now, nothing set in stone right now. Sunday may not seem like that far away, but when you're forecasting snow, it can be quite some time, and some model disagreements still on this, but you get the idea. Here's the European. This is Sunday afternoon. We've got some snow falling there into the DC area, the DMV, the Delmarva, even up into Philly. Got a football game, playoff game there, so could see a snow game out of it. Definitely in the cards here. Much of New Jersey seeing some snow on this model run, up into Long Island, up into Boston by Sunday evening, and then gets out of here. So not a big deal, not a big storm on this model, but it is something to watch. In fact, I'll go ahead and change to another model. Let's show you the GFS as well. which shows the same storm system, but a little bit different. So let me back it up here. Here it is on the GFS, that coastal low forms, but it's kind of two areas. We get one stronger coastal low to form. It's a little too far offshore to bring any winter weather. That's Sunday morning. And then a secondary low pressure begins to form just off the coast of the Carolinas, and it's further south. This brings some snow into Raleigh, Charlotte, into Norfolk, Newport News, sections of southeastern Virginia there, and then it gets up the coast and kind of this, leaves dry air into the I-95 corridor. So both are solutions. Something in between is a solution. No storm at all is also a solution. And I think you can see that pretty well on the ensembles here. If we take a look at it, this is the chance of at least an inch of snow falling within a 24-hour time period on our European ensembles. This is that initial burst of snow. Again, I think the Ohio Valley into the interior Northeast is going to have a shot to see some snow out of that one. But then comes that secondary burst of energy, and not a huge signal, but a signal for the I-95 on the European ensembles here into the mountains of West Virginia, running a pretty good shot. But this is generally about a 20% chance of accumulating snow. So not expecting a big deal event, but something we're going to keep an eye on here with that potential setup going into Sunday. All right, and that gets us into next week. We've got the cold air now established by Monday and Tuesday. Then the question becomes, do we get a storm to overlap that cold air? And I think the answer is going to be yes, but the question is for who and exactly when. So this is the European. This is our 500 millibar height relative vorticity map. So basically look at this as a storm energy map. Anywhere you see kind of these brighter colors showing up, just imagine this as energy to kind of produce some sort of precipitation. Now, the way it starts on the European is this area I have circled on your map back into California. We get a bit of a trough to begin to develop. And remember, I'll just kind of draw it here. We've got strong kind of Arctic high pressure locked over the central part of the country at this time frame. This is Monday morning. And what you're going to get are these areas of energy that kind of just rotate around it. And that is what is going to produce the chance of snow. You've got, again, this big blocking air mass, so these storms are not going to be able to just push right through it. They're going to kind of rotate around it, and that's why we have the chance for snow and ice so far south, as I think the European depicts quite well here. So we'll move it ahead into time. See that little area near California, Arizona, New Mexico. That piece of energy kind of breaks off a little bit, and what happens is by Tuesday, Tuesday morning here, we'll stop it here. We've got this big strung out area of energy. But what's happening is this is producing a lot of lift along this area of the southern tier of the country, and that could produce waves of winter precipitation. So we could see little smaller systems in that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe with a map like this. And then the main entree, if you will, kind of comes after the fact. Watch that piece back near California. Watch it kind of break off here and begin to spin up on its own. This is Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday and into Wednesday afternoon, and then Thursday, Friday, and you'll notice a much more defined piece of energy by next weekend working on through there. So it's a complicated setup. There's a lot of energy, a lot of moving parts kind of revolving around each other here. And that's why we don't have a forecast completely nailed down yet. But what we do think is, again, the ingredients are there for that potential of winter weather out of this pattern and out of this setup. So here we go. Let me show you the latest European and what it looks like on the map here. Again, time right above my head, so feel free to go back to that in any moment. I'll try to verbalize the time here as well. All right, Monday afternoon, Monday evening, a winter storm, really especially Tuesday morning, beginning to break out through the deep south from Houston into Dallas, back towards Austin, San Antonio, Shreveport, Mississippi, and Alabama. And I'll kind of stop here, by the way, and remind you, we're still too far away to get into exact precipitation types, exact timing, and exact totals. If I don't smack my microphone, that'll help you even more probably. So just kind of get the general idea on the map here. We're at Wednesday night now. This is less than a week now, so we're gaining confidence. We're trending up, but I don't want you to look at this and kind of pull all the specifics out of it. Just get a general idea. And that's why I'm not showing you snowfall totals or anything like that. I'm just showing you the general idea that the model is projecting here. So winter storm through the deep south, getting into Georgia, the Carolinas, even into the deep south, deep deep south through Savannah, Charleston, heck, even Mobile, Alabama, trying to get in on the wintry action. This would be right around Tuesday into Wednesday, and then that kind of scoots on out of here, and it's a nice little winter storm for areas very far south. That would be Tuesday into Wednesday, and then you get another area after that. That's Wednesday into Thursday on the model for more areas, seeing some of that wintry precipitation again into the south from the Carolinas down through Georgia, Virginia, and then that one gets a little bit closer to the northeast. And then finally after that, you get the main piece of energy to come on through. This would be right around the 25th, and I think that one would have a higher end chance of impacting the northeast. So you get the point. Wave after wave after wave. That's something I think is important here. This might not just be one storm system. This could be multiple pieces of winter energy that produce some sort of precipitation. Now, that's the European. That's fun and dandy. What about the GFS? Well, folks, I'll tell you, it's quite different. So these are kind of the two main models we use, the European, the GFS, and there are other models. In fact, maybe if I can find some time here, I'll pull them up for you. But here's the GFS. Same time, I want you to notice something very different. I'm going to circle back where the piece of energy was on the European. In fact, let's go back to that European model run and back it up in time right here. So that was our main storm energy on the European. Let's look at the GFS at the exact same time. You notice the difference, folks? Let's go back. European, GFS. European, GFS. So the energy is not digging nearly as far west. Also, a whole nother piece of energy is showing up here. The GFS has this tight little couplet of vorticity that kind of enters through the desert southwest. And the models are just completely different on the setup here. And that's something to note. That's obviously going to play ramifications on the forecast. The GFS gets our main energy and just kind of dives it down a little bit differently. It strings it out less and produces less overall lift, but instead it's more of a compact one storm event on the GFS. Here's the energy, but remember, it's not digging all the way down into Texas and kind of looping up around like the European was a little bit more suggestive of. This is more of a closed trough that swings on through, and because of that, you get a completely different orientation in the storm. And you can see that on the model here. Let me show it to you. This is hot off the press this evening. We'll back it up. That's that first weekend energy. That gets on out of here, and then here comes the time frame for our main storm. And here it is, folks. Look at this. Completely different run than we saw yesterday. Completely different than the European model. We've got snow in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, and rain down into the Gulf Coast, as this is a much more defined frontal system. The European was more of an overrunning event, meaning that precipitation was getting thrown back into Arctic air. The GFS is more of a frontal system that is kind of just giving a different setup, basically. Now, still brings winter weather into portions of the Carolinas, brings heavy winter weather into the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and then brings a big storm up into the Northeast. So very different. And I'll tell you right now, I'm leaning towards the European. I think the GFS is kind of struggling with this, and here's one of the reasons why. Let me show you another model. Let's look at the Canadian model. And not to give you spoilers there, but let me back it up a little bit. So this is another model, exact same time frame. Let's look at early next week. Here it comes. And what does this look more like? What does this look more like? The GFS or the European? Here it is. Big southern winter storm, Gulf Coast winter storm, just, an all-timer on this model. That looks a lot more like the European model. Okay, well, that's interesting. Let's take a look at another model. What about the Icon model? This is another model we like to use pretty often. What does it show? Is it more like the European or the GFS? Let me get it to a right time that we can use here for our purposes. All right, here we go. This is early next week. Let's see what it shows. This is Monday into Tuesday. Yeah, that looks a lot more like the European, doesn't it? So I think we're on a consensus that's a little bit closer to the European. I feel confident still in a big southern winter storm. Another reason for that is this. Let's look at the ensembles. If all else fails, what do the ensembles say? Well, let's start with the chance of a big ice event. What is the chance that you get a good amount of freezing rain to fall over your area? Well, the European ensembles, folks, check out this explosion of freezing rain potential from Houston. We've got already a 50 to 60% chance of freezing rain being a big problem in South Texas, down into southern Louisiana. We'll move it ahead even further into time. I mean, heck, Savannah, Georgia, already at about a 50% chance of a significant ice event out of this, and really much of the South running high in chances for the potential of ice. And you can see that comes in waves as well. You can kind of back it up. Here's wave number 1, and here's wave number 2. So the European ensemble is kind of backing up its operational run. Next week could be a 1-2, maybe a 1-2-3 punch with this setup. Now, the bigger question that you're probably more excited about is snow. What are the odds we get big snow out of this? Well, the European ensembles, here we go. A big signal for snow from Texas through Louisiana, all the way up into the Carolinas. And folks, I'll tell you, for us to be about a week out, this is as good of a signal as you could ask for areas this far south. We just don't see it that often. And points to, all signs that the GFS is kind of in la land. And you can see those snow chances continuing, and then even kind of another little punch of snow there in the longer range, right into here is the time frame. I think the Northeast could be a little more favorable, closer to the 25th. Next week looks more like a deep south event. So I know my folks in the Northeast are tired of hearing it that you're not getting snow, but we'll continue to watch and monitor the trends on that as well. All right, final map I'll show you. What about the GFS ensembles? And this is the first time I'm checking this out with you, so we'll both analyze this together. Let's see what it shows. Same thing for snow, by the way. This is for snow, not ice. And yeah, check this out. Big signal for snow well down south. So even the ensembles are telling the operational GFS to get back in line, basically, kind of is what you're seeing here. So just a very impressive signal for a big southern winter weather event, and that's what I've still got in the forecast for next week. Now, what we're still needing to figure out, just to reiterate, exact timing, exact totals, exact precipitation type, and will this be multiple waves? Or will this just kind of be one big storm that we're watching in that time frame? That's what we'll find out over the weekend, and I'll continue to keep you updated on. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this evening. Stay safe out there, stay warm, think snow, and I'll see you all next time.